I think.
So there you go. We're being recorded. Everybody, hello. This is Rick DiClemente. Welcome to Astrology Unplugged. We are on episode 229 tonight, and we have a lot of good things scheduled. And we may do a chart later on. But I'm going to talk to you about a really oddball part of astrology that you hear about now and then. And it really is not discussed much, and it really needs to be. And it's called electional astrology. Okay, it's got nothing to do with elections. It's when the astrologer elects a time for you to be born, to get married. In India, you are so close to your astrologer, they're required to build an apartment out back for your astrologer to live. And he's the one that tells you who you're going to be married to before you meet them. So they go a little bit far out. But their astrology is quite different than ours, and they're really, really accurate, I must say. Electional astrology, somebody comes to me and says, we want to get married. We don't want to get married during a bad time. Give us a good time. All right, so let me walk you through this story. Okay, so a couple says that to me. The first thing I do is I do what Stephen Arroyo said. What is the couple's ability to have a relationship? You can't just go into it blindly. What is his ability? What is her ability? Or whether it's to hers, or whether it's to him, or whatever. And if one of the charts or both has trouble in general having relationships, I'd say you'd better cover that issue before you worry about picking a time. Now, let's just imagine that the couple is all ready to go. There is nothing any human being can do or machine can do. The couple is going to be married at the second that the planets match exactly who they are. Nothing can change it, which is why I put on electional astrology. Did you have your hand up, Kathy? Okay. There is nothing that the couple can do to be married at a different time. You're going to be married at the split second that the planets match exactly who the two of you are, the dyad, who the dyad is. So it's a myth that you can choose these things. Now I'm going to go through a lot of stories with you because it's really intriguing. So when I was new and started, I got this kind of, I got to fix my phone. I got this kind of question quite often, and it was something old astrologers did more of, and it's really passe now, and it's really a good thing. Now, I must say I've given marriage dates to people that got married. Some of them got divorced. A lot of them are still together, and I don't do it anymore. I don't do it at all. Okay. Except for one woman, I do a little bit, and I'll tell you about that later. So, I am an early astrologer, started in 78. And to show you how stupid I was, I fell into the trap of all astrology. Oh, I'm getting married. I'm going to get married not only when Jupiter's at the top of the chart, I'm going to get married when Jupiter's in Sagittarius and Uranus. Out of my mind. I don't know what I was doing. Nobody can withstand that. And we had to really fight 21 years of marriage. We had to fight Jovian issues in our marriage, and it ended up being leading to divorce. And it was not a really good choice. So here's the wedding, and I had the minister ordained just for that, and she had her watch with her, and I told her I wanted that marriage to come down to 1:30. At 1:30, and to me, it is when they say, I pronounce you man and wife. To me, that's what it is. Other people differ. So we got married at 1:29:57. In sync with the Colorado atomic clock, of course. So I'm not even looking at everything else. You don't want to look at Saturn and Pluto and Scorpio in the 8th house, do you? pretend like you don't see Saturn and Pluto in the 8th house in Scorpio. I figure, well, Pluto's got to be somewhere. May as well be home in the 8th house. Anyhow, the marriage didn't work. The marriage was good for a good while, and it had Jovian problems near the end. Let's just say that. Later on, I'm going to be going over with you what each planet's weakness is if you stress it too much. So in other words, don't get married when Jupiter's at the top of your chart. Don't get married when Venus is at the top of your chart. Don't get married when anything at the top of your chart. It's just too strong. You want a balance. But I didn't know. I was an astrologer for 5 years. All right. Anyhow, here's a really intriguing story. Watch this. Here's a woman comes to me. I still deal with her today. She wants me to help her get married. I think it was 2003 or something. A marital date. And 2006. So I looked over everything. All right. What's interesting about this story is this. Do you see 0 Pisces rising? Okay. The marriage was supposed to take place before 4 o'clock. I told her to have the marriage take place before 4 o'clock. Marriage went off at 4:08, and Pisces rose instead of Aquarius. Well, what's intriguing about that is I started to get hints at that time to understand I can't do anything anyway, because the whole time we're sitting there, Aquarius is rising. Now, in astrology, I told you the sign that is rising, the planet that rules that sign rules that chart. If Aries is rising, Mars, wherever Mars is, rules the chart. If Gemini is rising, wherever Mercury is, rules that chart. But there's an exception, and I don't know where it came from, and it's true. The outer planets cannot rule a chart. So you cannot have Pluto, Neptune, or Uranus. So Pluto, Neptune, or Uranus can't do it. Okay, so you notice the whole time we're sitting there, they got delays and delays about the chairs, delays about the chair, delays about the preacher, delays about the chair, delays about that. Boom, sun goes, the rising sign changes minutes earlier, 30 seconds earlier. The rising sign changes to Pisces, which now the chart's ruled by Jupiter instead of by Saturn. The chart was ruled by Saturn for those 2 hours. Now the chart, once it got to be ruled by Jupiter, the girl's Sagittarian, the marriage proceeded. So I understood at that time, what am I doing here? What am I doing? God's taking place here. He's doing the work. So what I tried to do with people, so they got married with Jupiter ruling the chart instead of Saturn. Okay, so I'll go ahead with the third one. The third one is this rather dramatic woman who wants to get married to this guy. Hold on one moment here. This couple wants to get married with their theme, their motif in zoot suits at a local theater. They want to get married at a local theater dressed up like the mafia. Okay, it's your marriage. So when they asked me when to get married, I eventually got to the point where I said, I'm not going to tell you when to get married. It's too much responsibility. It's extremely difficult, even for the best astrologers. But I'll tell you what times not to get married. Because it ain't the date. You pick the date first, and then within that date, there are tons of times during those 24 hours that you don't want to get married because the planets change on the angles. So I might as well get that on here. Let's hold on. It's a good idea. Okay, so I'm helping this couple get married. And I give them a lesson. We go over days and weeks and months. And, they give me like a 6-month window because some planets are together for 4 years. You can't get around it. Like if you got married now, you're getting married with Saturn square Uranus, no whether you like it or not. And you're getting married with Pluto square to Eris. And you're getting married when the country's going through a Pluto return. So it's heavy duty time to choose. So I gave them a list of dates and times. Once they pick the day, which has got, what I just try to do is avoid heavy clashes of planets. I don't want that heavy clash of planets going on within you during your marriage. So I didn't like Saturn in Virgo, but I kept it away from Venus, right? And I didn't like certain things, so I kept them mild as I could be. I couldn't stop the Venus opposite Uranus, but they're the ones that picked Zoot Suit in a city theater. All right. So they're a little bit inventive and dramatic. All right. So what I did to them is I gave them a time. And I said to them, okay, get married at this time. It's the best. I'm really doing the best I can. Get married at this time. But you got to get married after this hour and not before that hour. And during the day, the planets will move into position where they're really ugly, harsh, then they move out of it during the day because of the 4 angles. The 4 angles. When the planets cross there, they just come too strong. So I got to keep the planets off of those 4, and the whole thing's rotating every 24 hours. So I give them that, and I think it's like, you got to get married after X amount of time. And the preacher is told this, and the preacher ends up going too fast, and he's gone too fast, and we're 15 minutes before the time. You cannot get married now, not for 15 more minutes. So she tells the audience that she's getting married astrologically. Now I'll giggle and giggle, but what else with the Venus opposite Uranus, right? So I'm sitting there watching, and I keep looking at my watch. I'm up in the audience. This is a theater. And the time is going by really slowly. So she says to everybody, anybody got any jokes? So they're up there telling jokes to pass the 15 minutes away, which is a really long time when you're waiting, So the time passes by and they get married. And the woman next to me says, I think you're being rather rude, just checking your watch all the time. I said, lady, I'm the astrologer controlling the clock here. So she understood then. So they went on, they got married. They're still together. Okay. So now we're going to talk about these issues. Let me just show you an example of this chart as an example. Now, if we put this on by hours, we're going to move this chart just as an example by hours. This is when they actually got married. If they would have gotten married a horrible time to get married with Neptune right on the ascendant. Planets on the angles are 1, 2, 3, 4. Planets on the angles become dramatically powerful, which is why my Jupiter-Uranus was not a good thing to do. Okay, so let's go forward. Now that was at 3:18 p.m. Now, do you want to get married with Pluto and Jupiter on your midheaven? I don't. Do you want to get married? Do you want to get married? Marriage is hard enough. Do you want to get married at 3:58 or around then when Saturn in Virgo is setting? You don't. So the astrologers not only got to pick a day when the planets aren't passing each other, but also a time when the planets aren't really on the angles. So that makes it really, 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 really complex. And a good astrologer will take 3 or 4 days to figure out a time and date like this. So then I finally figured out, why am I doing God's work? I can't do God's work if I wanted to. There's nothing I can do. So I retired from it. I'm not doing it anymore. In other words, if you have a good relationship, you cannot pick the wrong time to get married. It won't happen. Preacher won't show up. The ring is missing. You're going to get married when the time is right. It's going to happen. And it's again, drill this faction home. It's again, we're connected to spiritual law. We're connected to the collective. And I don't know what it's about, John. I don't understand. It's karmic. It's intuitive. It's quantum. It's just how it works. I was reading today about the quantum energy. Not only does quantum energy change when you see the object, whether it's a wave or a particle, not only does it change when you see it, it changes when you know about it. Just knowing about it, the particles change. So we're seeing how consciousness is directly involved with reality in the creation of it. Anyhow, that's heavy stuff. So now what I tell people, when you feel good, get married. When you feel good, sell that house. I have stopped doing that with people. Boy, that's a tough one. Tell me when to sell my house. Well, how come it isn't selling? Why isn't it selling? I don't know. I'm not doing it anymore. Now, another thing. If I really, really study, John, and everybody else, I pick a good time and date for you to get married. I'm setting myself and you up for the rest of your life because I've chosen your birth chart and I'm responsible for all the events that you'll ever have. I don't want it because it's just too complex. You got midpoints, you got fixed stars, you got so many things beyond just the sun and it. Okay, it's just too hard. And it's really a slap in the face to God because God knows what he's doing. Just like that preacher who was late, that caused them to go into Jupiter rising instead of Saturn ruler, Jupiter ruler. Also, bad marriages that we tried to get them married at better times. They didn't pull off. They didn't work out. They went back to a bad combination of planets because that's how they combined. So it's stop fooling yourself is the real answer to this question. Now, the only woman I do, she just comes up with lots of events and she comes up to me with dates. So I'm going to do this and I'm going to go on this date or these 3 or 4 dates. These 3 or 4 dates, I want to do this. These 5 or 6 dates. And I help her pick out the date that I think is the best. I don't pick the time. I just pick the date that I think is best. And she's real happy with me doing that. And she claims that everything goes right. And she's really feels a lot better when I do this. So it's the only one I do it with. She's not going to do it. Too much responsibility. I don't want the karma of these 2 people. You guys are married, you pick your own karma. Okay. So I told you about the times. The times are really, really critical, mainly because the planets end up on those angles. And they just get big and they're really dominant, let alone what's going to happen years later when a planet goes over that point. So it's just, and then you got the moon void. You got the void moon. So, God bless you both. Hope you have a good marriage. All right. Now, this is something that's really intriguing. And I've seen this many times. Businesses can have multiple birth times. The day that you decided on the name, the day you decided to incorporate, the day you opened the door, the day you had your grand opening. And what I suggest to you, and I'm going to tell all of you this very clearly, whether you're walking a dog or whether you're buying something or you're getting a car or you're shaking hands with somebody, if you're doing something significant, write down the time. and keep it in a notebook. Because later on, you're going to say, boy, this thing has grown into this entity of itself, and I can't do a chart on it because I know I was born. When I went to grad school, when I agreed to something, when I shook their hand, when whatever it is, if you think it's significant, write down the time and the date and what it was, and just keep a little notebook. And you'll really be glad, because you'll get to a point, you'll see what's going on in this business. And I'll sometimes, if I have that, I'll go right and I know exactly what it is. You need to modernize. Now, I wouldn't know that otherwise. So it's really, really important, not only your children's birth, but the birth of the dogs or cats, the birth of handshakes. So in businesses, it's very normal to have 3 or 4 birth times and birth dates. Now, what do you do with that? What you do is you make charts for all 4 times and dates. And then as time goes on, you're going to start to see, well, this chart number 2 here, it's the one that reacts to planets. Because remember, any birth chart is going to get further movement of the planets. It's going to get activated. Well, these planets, the eclipse just happened, and this planet, this chart really went wild. The other 3, nothing happened. So you don't decide on that day, number 2 is right. You make a note. You keep on watching. You keep on watching. And if through the years you start to see, it is number 2, it is number 2, it is number 2. Now you know it's number 2. So what's the difference in your business if you have, let's go here. What's the difference in your business if it started when you agreed to it, when you picked the name The Beatles, when you wrote your first record? What's the difference? They all have different seeds. They all have different natures. Now, for example, when I first got here, the owner of the Point of Light magazine asked me to do a chart on the city of Pittsburgh. And I did an article in 2005. And I saw a plaque somewhere that showed that they were born as a Pisces. So I wrote this long article about my first article in Pittsburgh about how the city was Piscean, blah, 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 blah. And there had been a movie called The Fish, what was it called? Incorporation Chart versus Founding Chart is exactly right. The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had an NBA team, and there were somehow the Condors. But the movie was after one of their Dr. J's or one of their fabulous players that they had. And it was called The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, the Goofy movie. And everybody read about the city being Pittsburgh, being a Pisces. So the Piscean qualities projected onto the city made a lot of sense. So a couple of years later, I see a plaque that says Pittsburgh is at 5 planets in Sagittarius. I go, well, what the hey? Is born in December when William Pitt took down the flag of England. They put up the American flag at Fort Duquesne. Well, that sounds like a second birth. That's what it is. So when you start to think about that chart, I got a booth here. When you think about that chart with 5 planets in Sagittarius, does that sound like Pittsburgh and a shot and a beer and the Steelers? That sounds like Pittsburgh. Okay, and when Pluto hit that chart, we almost lost. Pluto hit really close. We almost lost the Penguins. Very threatening. So I knew that chart was accurate. So what do I say? John says about incorporation, etc. What I'm here telling you, what I understand, is Pittsburgh is the black sheep of Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh is known as the capital of Appalachia. The money goes to Albany, not Albany. The money goes to Harrisburg and Philadelphia, and we get the leftovers here. Look, go drive around Harrisburg on their roads, and then come here and drive on our roads. Okay? But I'm not going to get into a lot of details about this now. So I saw the one chart was the city. I know John does a lot of this work with Akron Dayton, Columbus, the other John in Columbus. So I saw how one chart ruled how the city was seen and treated. The other one is really how it is. And then when you got guys like Clemente and you got Lemieux and all these fabulous stars and all these Super Bowls, you can see why the city has such an addiction to sports. That's a Sagittarian thing. So it's intriguing to watch. So it asked me to explain, when I was writing this here, how is each planet excessive? You'll see that this goes right back to beginning astrology. When I put the planet Jupiter, let alone Uranus, on the midheaven of my wedding, what do you think happened to us? We just had wild, crazy things happen to us all the time. We try to settle down, things get wild and crazy. Okay, anyhow, when Pluto's too strong in the charts, you'll have somebody trying to dominate the other person. The other one wants to be dominated, but you have this. This is what Pluto does. One's dominate T. Okay? Because it's a power struggle. And even the weak one is in a power struggle because the weak position is really over top of the top one, in another way of speaking. So you have issues where it's not true sharing. A marriage needs to be healthy, true sharing. And when Pluto is too strong, the temptation is just too strong for one to dominate the other. Neptune. When Neptune is too strong, and what I mean by that is squaring one of the angles or right on one of the angles, as you saw, when Neptune's too strong, things are just too fuzzy. You can't figure things out. You've got differences of opinions with your religions and your philosophies. One of you is doing drugs, one of you is not. Neptune can present all kinds of troubles, and the real way you succeed with a strong Neptune is the two of you get in together, working on spiritual matters together. It can be really beautiful. So all these planets can be really wonderful, or they can be terrible. So don't get programmed to one or the other. But if you've got a strong Neptune, you're going to be doing a lot of spiritual work, or your relationship won't work. And one of you will end up putting things in your arm or doing the bottom of the bottle or having affairs. Those are the three things that happen with Neptune. So these are reasons why you don't want to do electional astrology, in my opinion, and I'm just giving you generic knowledge of what the planets do, plus and minus, because it never hurts you to keep hearing these theories, these definitions of the archetypal natures, because it's the same thing over and over. When Uranus is too crazy, okay, the relationship's too wild. There's too much going to the parties, too much gambling going on, too much vacation, too much wildness. There's no preparing and solidifying. When Uranus is healthy in the chart is exciting. The people find each other exciting. You're stimulating. You don't get stale. When Uranus is wild, you got all kind of crazy discords, just surprises keep happening out of nowhere. So it's just the same principles over and over and over. Well, I don't have to tell you about Saturn. When Saturn is in the way, when Saturn's too dominant, one of you won't talk. One of you will talk. One of you won't. It's amazing in these charts about how one person will represent one planet and one will represent something else. And I'll tell you something else. I've done a lot of these kind of charts, and I don't find them that effective. The nature of your business on this chart, the nature of your presidency on this chart, the nature of this congressional session, they just don't work that well. Now, solar return charts, they work. Natal charts, they work. harmonic charts, they work. For gust charts, a little bit. But I don't find much faith in these. I've looked back at my marriage and looked at these planets and said, what was in the marriage that matched this? And I don't see that much. I see some things. Anyhow, so going on. So when Saturn is problematic, you're not paying your bills, you got too much weight on you. And one of the things Saturn does that's just downright awful, it just separates you. It puts you in one town, puts the other person in the other town, and you can't get together. And you got long-term Zoom sessions every night. It's just something about Saturn. I don't know why. That's why it's called a karmic planet. One person's one town, one person's out of town, they can't get together. Can't happen. Or one person wants to live here, another person can't stand the dry heat. Just et cetera, et cetera. Real stuff gets in the way. Now, if Saturn's too strong, that's just what happens. And a lot of people have to just cope with it. When Saturn's too weak, when the people in the relationship are not stepping up, they're not paying their bills, they're not being responsible, they're not going to the doctor, etc. So that's what happens with Saturn. When Jupiter's involved, Jupiter is probably the worst of the planets in terms of misunderstanding, because everybody thinks it's just good luck at all times. And it isn't. It's just good luck always. We'll always need a 7 roll a 7. And it'll always be 7. Well, sometimes it's 8. It's just not always a 7. And it's called BSing yourself. Okay, that's the problem with Jupiter. Jupiter is about BSing yourself, not taking things seriously enough, and mainly promising and not delivering. Okay, when Jupiter's good, and it's good much of the time, it's wonderful, it's well-meaning, it's fun, it's travel, it's upbeat. When you get problems, it slides off your back, no problem. So it all depends on these planets, how they're placed, etc. So I think you're getting the idea. All right, now let's take a look here. I want to mention a couple of different things today. I was watching last night, in case you don't know it, on PBS, and I believe it's nationwide. PBS has a marvelous series on the history of mental health. And they've just showed series 1 and 2. And I'm sure you can go back to pbs.org and catch up on 1 and 2. And I don't know, but I know it's going to be at least several more. And right now they just did the history of part 1, which is people in the 1800s and what they did with them when they were mentally ill. Boy, was this scary. And now I think we're up to 1920, and they're starting out with the DSM, and they're starting to classify people as schizophrenic and people as psychotic, and you're starting to get the definitions that plague us today. They mentioned King George III. What do? I get my computer's open all night when I'm watching TV. King George III of England goes through a nutso period, and he goes nutso, and he's got planets a lot like John's, but I already told John tonight why John's not got the experience that this guy had. He's got 6 planets in Gemini. 6 planets in Gemini, and I believe that's all 5 of his personal planets. John has a different case, and he's got 5, and there's a whole different scenario, which I'd be glad to explain to him. So not only did this king, what do you think if you're going to serve a king who's got 6 planets in Gemini, how are you going to ever know what to fix him to eat? It's just always changing. Everything's changing. You know what mood he's going to be in ever. Okay? So he's born with them opposite Uranus and the moon. 6 planets opposite Uranus and the moon. Uranus opposite 6 planets. It's just so unstable, okay? And What happened was Neptune started to go across. I watched him in 1820. I put the planets, where's his chart? They happened to know his birth time. I put the planets up in 1820 and I started walking it through, and he had 10 or 20 years of severe mental illness while Neptune was opposing all those Gemini planets. I'm sorry, squaring. Neptune was squaring all those Gemini planets. Nobody can withstand it. You just can't withstand it. So they gave it some name, porphyria, or some strange illness of the blood. They do a lot of leeches back then. And when it finally got Neptune, opposite Neptune, 29 degrees, he died. But it's just so intriguing to watch somebody's chart. And I keep telling you, you can't do this by talking. You got to do charts and you got to see. So we see in King George of England that we were revolting against. Look at this chart. Sun, Mercury, Saturn, Venus, Neptune, Chiron, all in Gemini, all opposite the moon and Uranus. So you focus on that Uranus and you look right across at 5 degrees and you come up with what's really close. Well, it's the Chiron. The Chiron doesn't look like it, but the Chiron is exactly, what am I doing here? The Chiron is inconjunct. The Chiron is inconjunct, 5 signs away. But what you really have here is Uranus opposite the 29-degree point. And then the moon is involved. Now, beside all that, all this is the basis of Mars and Aries. Mars and Aries. Let's start a war. Let's stop the war. Let's start a war. Let's stop the war. Off and on. He's just erratic. So, transiting Neptune in his life got all the way around. He got to 29 degrees right here, and he died. Okay, now, that's why you got to get Celeste to run on your iPhone or your little smartphone. It's free from alabe.com, alabe, ALABE.com. It runs on either operating system. It only keeps 2 charts at a time, one and the one you're doing next. If you want it for free, but it's good for doing a general chart. You gotta start tracking people because you're not going to get it just from my talking to you. Okay, so his was another intriguing chart that we studied. Now, I'm on the radio. I started in 78, and I went on the radio in 82. And I had this really nice man, this really nice gentleman who would call me every now and then on Sundays, and I would do his chart. And I was just starting. You know, I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying to learn. I was getting better and better. And he was a Pisces. And he was something like Sun, Saturn opposite Neptune, or was Sun, Neptune opposite Saturn. It just ain't a good combination. That's a combination of somebody who's just weak, an alcoholic. Usually, it doesn't mean a curse. Doesn't mean he has to be, but there are deeper spiritual implications. But he says on the phone, and he says it every time he calls, how come I'm always getting arrested? And I say, I just think it's probably because you keep breaking the law. And he goes, oh, never thought of that. And he loved the guy, you know, nice guy. You know, you wish him the best. You know this is going on. How can he's really pleading serious with me? What's wrong with me? Why am I getting arrested? So I try to deal with him best I could. And then there was always this woman that would call every Saturday morning astrology show, 1982. She said, my name is Evelyn. I just wanted to know when I'm going to get in the high rise. And she said, I don't know what day I don't know what time I was born, but my mother, I was born in Harvard, D. Grace, Maryland. And all I know is my mother said it was a beautiful morning. And I don't know what time it was. I just want to know if I'm getting high rise. I don't know if you're going to get in a high rise. I just don't know. I know you want me to say, yeah, but I don't know. And I tell her that. So that's the kind of stuff you get to deal with when you're new, and with some of the good stuff. Okay, Kathy, we're getting to the point here soon where we are going to do your chart here in a minute. But I want to take a moment to talk about two things here. Why are you the way you are? Why? I mean, I can look at your 12th harmonic and I can get a real good sense about why you chose to have the challenges in this lifetime that you did. And it makes a lot of sense. Even when I ask you about your experiences, but why? Why do you have 7 brothers and 6 of you are normal? One is not. Chicken or an egg? Are you the way, is King George the way he was because the planets were that way? Or is it vice versa? Or is it both? You can't answer the question. You just can't answer it. And if anybody can, I sure want to hear it. John, Dr. John, you got any ideas? Dr. John in Columbus, you got any ideas why that is?
Not off the top of my head.
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you've seen enough charts. People are the way the chart says. True?
Yeah, absolutely.
In almost every case. Sometimes you'll get a chart with a wrong birth time. And I'll look at the chart and say, this ain't right. Your birth time is wrong. And I'll say, oh, it's PM, it's not AM. But even with a doctor of education, why are people the way they are?
This is the point where you usually tell us to look at their harmonics, Rick.
Well, I think the harmonics really do help, yes. Yeah, well, good idea. Let me say one more thing. This is kind of unusual. When I have watched people during a long Pluto transits can be tough. They can be okay, but they can be deadly. The number one thing Pluto does, I'll remind you, Pluto is sensing whether you're trying to own your courage, whether you're trying to step up to the plate, but it's looking to see if you're trying. I can't emphasize this enough. And if it decides that you're not, the number one thing it does to you, Claudia, is it separates you from your support systems. Dad's got no money anymore. Mom has died. The job is gone. You lose your support system. Look at what's happened to Trump. Pluto's been all over him the last couple of years. Granted, he's got a tremendous support system. Most of it's not real because Neptune's opposite Neptune. But what I have found beside Pluto, well, the reverse side, if you are trying, Pluto does wonderful things for you, helps you with the right books, the right movies, the right friends, the right associations. It can be really, really good. If you're trying, it knows because there's no it. Pluto is inside, and you know if you're trying or you're not. But what I have found, and this is really intriguing, I really think that with Pluto transits, it travels very closely and parallels what we call a death wish. I really think so. It's really common for people to have a death wish when it's going on. And here's why I think that happens. I think that Pluto is very altruistic and it is very honorable. And there's a part of you inside of you that will even sacrifice yourself for the good of all. Sounds like Spock, doesn't it? But I've heard people talk, you've heard people talk about wanting out and wanting to kill themselves. Well, there's a difference between whining about that and being very serious about it. And I have definitely heard people discuss, we'd all be better off if I weren't here. So I don't know why it is, but I do encourage you that if you're watching people going through a Pluto time, usually that means Pluto opposite the sun or the moon or square hard angle to the sun or moon. I encourage you to keep an eye on that. Watch out for it. Be aware of it. Also, Pluto is the kind that brings somebody out. It did to me. I was at a low point in my life. I wasn't suicidal a long time ago, but it brought some guy out of nowhere that just snatched me. He just snatched me before I went down any further. It was miraculous. And brought me a whole new group of friends. And we started rebuilding. That's the Pluto, death and rebirth. But I don't understand it. I'm not going to guess, but I do encourage you, if you watch this happen, you'll see it. And what's going through a humongous Pluto return now? What? The USA. Think there's any death wishes going on? It can manifest in many ways. And I reiterate here, here's the USA's chart. Let me get this ready for you. That's not the right one. Okay, USA chart. And we will do the return. Okay, and then we'll put it back on the screen. Okay, here is Pluto. Here's Pluto in 1776. 27 degrees and 32 minutes. 256 years later, Pluto's gone all the way around. Look at where Pluto is tonight. 26 degrees and 8 minutes. So Pluto's returned. And when you're talking astrology, you don't have to be exact. It's in the area. This has been going on for 5 years. It's got another 10 years to go. So what are you seeing? What you're seeing with America is you're seeing, like it or not, we're being forced to look at what we are. Not what they told us in grade school, but what we are. Look what's happening with the African Americans. I mean, it's just a marvelous turning point. You can just sense it. And you can sense it with all things, not just them. And there's this seriousness that's coming from inside that's called Pluto. And that Pluto is saying, get it together or get out of here. And it's very severe. So I don't have to tell any of you about this. But the point is, I do think there's some kind of death wish that accompanies it. Now, we do see a lot of ex-military people. We're seeing, I saw on the list, a lot of people from EMS, emergency systems, EMTs, whatever, kill themselves because they just see too much, too much. The problem with the US, I'm going to keep it very simple and move on. The problem with the US is the USA is so sick. We got so many wounds, and Neptune's opposite Neptune at the same time. We have so many wounds. And we got a really rich chart, a lucky chart. It's very buoyant. It's got a lot of resources. Do we have enough to bounce back? I don't know. But anyhow, let's end that section right now. Give us some thought about what you think about the death wish, and we'll move on to Kathy. Before I move to Kathy, I want to ask you, do any of you have questions about what we just covered? I'll be with you in a second, Erica. You folks, I thank you for coming, watching on YouTube. If you'd like to join us live any Thursday night, 8 o'clock Eastern, just go to Google, type in Astrology Unplugged. You will get the link. It's free, and you will be put into a waiting room, and we get up to 100 seats each week. You're welcome to join us anytime. Okay, we'll get to Claudia in 1 second. I want to follow up with let's unmute Erica and see what her question is.
I just had a thought when, you mentioned about the Neptune being opposite Neptune, and I'm wondering if it could be like the positive Neptune opposite the negative Neptune, like the lies opposite all the ideals, because that seems to be the fight going on.
Well,
right
you're on the right track. You're absolutely on the right track. I shook my head no because of the way you said it. Now, Neptune can be really positive and it can be awful both, but it's not one's a good versus one's a bad. It's all the same Neptune. What's happening during a Neptune return is Neptune has made a promise. Let me show you here. Let me show you what this means. Okay, I'm gonna make it simple here. What's happened to you is this. Neptune is the country's ideals. So is Pluto. But it's really your true spiritual ideals. Or does that Statue of Liberty really mean what it says? So when we were born, this is the date, you have to really focus heavily on Neptune and Virgo, because when we were born, there was no Neptune until 17-something, later, 18-something, Uranus was first. There was no Neptune in the chart. But after we found out, we looked backward where it was, we put it on the chart, up in the idealistic ninth house. We see that it's square to Mars, which is just terrible. Just terrible. I discovered that about 6 months ago. The Neptune confusion square to Mars, which means we can do anything we want. We can do anything we want. My son's in Guam. Where's your son? Oh, he's in Germany. That's okay. We can go wherever we want. Put any base where we want. Your backyard, we can do it, right? That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem, Neptune square Mars, is everybody thinks if they keep playing on their phone, everything's going to just pass by. It'll be okay. So when Neptune was born, it had very high ambitions. It's in Virgo, which is a sign of taking care of the people, building social structure that help everybody out. Very much what happened during the LBJ administration and with FDR. But what happened is Neptune went around after 164 years, and now it's over here. So it's opposite itself. So it's not a question of the good and bad Neptune. What it is, Erica, is the Neptune is testing itself. It's testing itself. How has this Neptune promise worked out? Has it worked out or not? It's kind of like, here's your midterm. You know it or you don't. Neptune return is like, here's your final. Now, do you like that, Linda? Neptune opposite Neptune is your midterm. Neptune coming all the way as your final. So if you've been doing good things, helping people, loving people, reaching out, it can be wonderful. Erica, the energy is here. It's not the bad energy's here. The energy's here, but do we have the soul, the structures, the willpower to express it, to own it? That's what matters. That's why the Pluto transit is so threatening. That's why the Neptune is so threatening. Not because of the planet, because are we owning it? Are we being it? Now, when you see shows like this and other spiritual shows, wonderful sign that Neptune is it's coming through a lot of people in a good way. Yes. Okay. I hope
you're recording again.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you turned it off.
I turned it off. I turned it off when I tried to find the chart.
I was, because I was just wondering where all this conspiracy stuff and people believing.
It's the Neptune. It's the Neptune opposite Neptune. Yes. In that case, what you just got a whole lot of Neptune. And when Neptune's around, here's what's happening, Erica. Proper Neptune, real Neptune, wants you to see, write this down. Proper Neptune wants you to see that none of this is real, and we're all just one heart. Like John said, we're all just one beating mind. Unrealistic Neptune is it's in la la land. It's hiding behind a tree. It's hiding behind a tree and it thinks nobody can see it. All these affairs and stuff, lies, weapons of mass destruction, lies, alternate truths, all this shit. Okay? It's not Neptune, it's how people are using it or abusing it. Thank you. I need to move on. Very good. Now I want to take John's, was it John? Who had their hand up?
It was me, but it's not. Go on.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you very much. Let's go on to Kathy. Let's get you unmuted, Kathy. And we're going to double check your chart. And I like to do a person now and then because we get too far away from real astrology. And doing a person is really a good thing. The main reason it's a good thing, there's something Kathy needs. And it's going to show up tonight. It didn't show up last week. It's not going to show up next week. It's showing up tonight. And I told her around 9 o'clock, I would try to get to it. And I have nothing to do with it. It happens or it doesn't happen. Right, Kathy?
Right.
Okay. Now let's get started here just lightly. Where do you live?
Oklahoma City.
Oh, very good. Okay. It's nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
Okay, here's your chart. All right. Now, I've not just glanced at this. I have not really studied it. Let's just see what we got. Okay, let's start off with, we got a Virgo woman, right? Whose sun is 6 degrees from Saturn, right? That's very symbolic already, because when you got a Virgo, you got to wonder, are they already too earthbound? Are they already too much about getting stuff done? And then you put it next to Saturn, and Saturn says, oh yeah, you're going to get a lot done, aren't you? Okay, so we have to wonder about that. We're not doing anything special. We're just automatically seeing, could this be too much earth pressure? Is there too much pressure on her to always get things done? Is she the one that's always looked to fix everything? She got a smile on her face, which means yes. Okay, now we got Mars rising. So we know that's good, even though, watch how I do this. Mars is very weak in Libra because it's opposite Aries. It's in its detriment in Libra. But it's Mars and it's near the ascendant, so she's very Martian. So she takes a weak planet and turns it into a strength. And this is really good. Why? Why is this Mars good? Because when you got too much Earth, like Sun and Saturn, you're doing what you should, doing what you should. I want to do what I want. Do what you should, do what you should. And it can really wreak havoc on you, not letting you have any freedom, feeling guilty when you have a good time. These are real Virgo things. But when Mars is there, Mars is, yeah, the hell with it. I'm doing what I want to do. So it helps you, see?
Yeah.
See, we see a combination in charts. There are combinations of many factors, which is why I tell everybody to use a pencil. All right. Don't bite your lips, Claudia. I like picking on her. Okay. That's all in good fun. All right. So we know we got a strong Saturn, Earth stuff here. We know we got a planet kind of all by itself here. Look at this. It's not exact, but this is pretty much a bucket pattern to Jupiter in Sag. This is wonderful. You've got a really strong Jupiter in Sag. It may have some problems with it. It does square the sun. No, it does square. It squares Mercury. All right, just think your mind, 16 and 19. But the T-square to Jupiter means this. You're really lucky, and I'm sure you take this for granted, but when you get in too much of a fight inside your head and all this, Jupiter just says, oh, what the heck? And it lets it go. See, you're fortunate to have that Jupiter as an outlet, because Jupiter in Sag is, This is no fun. I'm not doing this. Forget it. The dishes aren't getting washed till tomorrow. Goodbye. Without that Jupiter, you stay up late and get the damn dishes done. You see? So Jupiter can be really good in this aspect because it acts as a safety valve. Okay? Now, granted, there are times when you go off and you just become flippant about something, and 2 days later you realize you shouldn't have been so flippant. But I would rather see you get flippant than to have that Saturn give you ulcers. And when Saturn's in Virgo like that, and the sun's in Virgo, that's your number one complaint. Your number one complaint is the upper GI.
Right.
It's the number one complaint in astrology, without a doubt. Okay. So you see the balance already? We got too much Earth. We got Mars battling it. We got a T-square to Jupiter. So we're starting to see some good aspects. And I'll tell you right now, you're not here for happenstance tonight. You're here because something very major has happened to you, and we're going to help you. We're going to help you give yourself permission to go be yourself, because that's why you're here, and that's how readings happen on this show. They just do. You don't think so? Ask Claudia. Claudia will tell you. She knows. All right. All right. So we look across, we see a wonderful moon in Taurus. Why? The moon is exalted in Taurus. The best place for the moon is in Taurus. Why? Because you got this great big bucket of feelings, and it's in this really strong, earthy Taurus, providing a concave home for it. There's nothing worse than water that just dissipates. And there's nothing worse than a puddle that gets too old and stale, but this is symbolic of in between. Your feelings have containment. You're able to be strong about your feelings. You're able to have strong emotions, and that's the number one thing you got to have when you got too much Virgo. Because Virgo is all about, I don't want to hear about your feelings. Get back to work. Well, with you and the moon in Taurus, you're not just get back to work. You do have sensitivity, and you do have family in mind, and you do have concern about how people feel. And that's really, really good. You following me?
Yes.
Okay, so far are we sounding on track or not?
You're sounding pretty good on track, yeah.
Okay. Let's continue. Remember, we haven't seen the whole chart yet. All right. We got 23 degrees of Sagittarius, of 23 of Cancer at the midheaven. And right away, we see the story. 21 degrees, 23 degrees, 23 degrees, 23 degrees, 23 degrees. Let's stop and superimpose the planets right now. All right, watch what this does. We're going to put today's planets on top of your chart, and you're going to see why it's been the way it is and what's going on. Where is Pluto? 26. She's been sitting at 23 for a couple of years. She's been sitting 23, 24, 25. This is the bottom of your chart, the home, the family. Where's Eris? 24 degrees. These are the story. I keep telling everybody the story is Eris squared to Pluto. These are two heavyweights. This planet's got 20 more years before it even leaves Aries. And this planet's going to go out next year or two. So you're getting hit real hard on the 4th house and real hard on the 7th house. What does that mean? What that means is this. One's hitting the bottom of the chart, one's hitting the descendant. What that means is, this is complex. You ever go down the basement and you say, honey, we can't, are you married?
No.
Okay. Just imagine you're married to Mr. Cleaver for a moment. Honey, we got so many problems in the basement we can't keep ignoring. We got to deal with it. That's what's happening to USA. All foundations are crumbling. All of them. I'm not making this up. We wrote about this in 05. People don't want to hear it. But when Pluto is on your chart on one of the angles, and when Eris is on the other, what it means is not good or bad. But what it means is, and here's what's going to be so good about tonight. Here's what's going to be so good. But before I even talk to you, you're going to okay yourself tonight to do something fanatical. That's what's good about tonight. You're going to okay yourself to do something that you heretofore have thought was fanatical. So if you've been thinking about wipe the slate clean, let's just do it all up, take all the things out, put in a new foundation, and I'm talking metaphorically, not just your house. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
That's where it's gotten to. And the reason it's gotten here is because, number one, most of the country has ignored the problems too, which has led you to go to sleep, like most of us. Number two, is really hard to accept that stuff coming up for you, from you within, is speaking so dramatically, and it's right. And it is right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want you to tell me what you're thinking about what I'm saying.
Well, the last couple of years, I retired in 2018 in the fall, and the next year I went through breast cancer and chemo, and then had some heart damage from one of the medicines. So these last 2 years have all been recovery. And it's kind of like, okay, now that everything is opening up, it's like, I am ready to get out and go and do. I'm so tired of feeling like I've been held back. And I know it's been necessary.
You have not been held back. That's a myth.
Yeah. Okay. But feeling like, that it's like the time is not right to open the door and walk out.
I understand that.
So I'm waiting for that impulse to open the door and walk out.
It is over with. The impulse is here. The impulse has been here. I'm not going to look at your chart again. It is so strong, I don't need anything. What have I been telling y'all for the last month? Hey, I've been thinking about, go do it. Hey, I was wondering about, just go do it. That's what your chart is. Now, if I had you personally, I would do a longer session. I would investigate your past life, and I would probably come up with things like this. That in the past lives, you've been programmed, like most of us, that you're not good enough. You're not doing things right. You're not doing things correctly. And it can even come out in your mom and dad's voices because they play a role. And that's what led to the sickness. What leads to the sickness? I don't know a lot about breast cancer, and I'm sorry to hear about your illnesses. But what leads to the illnesses in Virgo people is they don't let things flow. They don't let it go. They get halfway and they go, stop it, something's wrong there. Fix it, fix it, fix it. Okay, let it go, fix it. See, there. And what do you think your body says? This is my opinion. What do you think your body says when the systems are flowing? You go, stop it. And it's not stop it. It's stop it. It's this panic. That's why the number one thing I do with Virgos, and most of my readings are Virgo women.
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing I do with Virgo people is to get the panic out. That's the first step. Oh, the dishes aren't done. No, the dishes aren't done. I'll get them later. The world's going to keep circling. See? And the reason I'm not looking at your chart anymore is because I'm telling you right now, I don't know what's going to happen to you because I'm not a medical astrologer. I don't deal with the future, but I can tell you your power is here. You're not going to mess around anymore. If you've got to close off the tube to supporting some niece or some nephew or some son, you're going to do it because it's not helping you. If you got to close off the tube and pinch the tube from that voice that keeps saying, be productive, be productive, be productive, then you're going to cut it because these are dramatic times with you. And the stronger you go at it, the better, because you're feeling it. You're feeling it. I'm certain of it. But when you're going to not feel it is when you start talking to people. Because they're going to be, oh, you're nuts, and oh, you're real correct. Don't listen to anybody. Nobody. So tell me how you're feeling about going forward.
Well, I feel like I'm going to be doing so with freedom that I've not had before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Big question. Why didn't you have it before?
Well, I think some of it was the voices in my head. The other was, you know, having to make a living, to earn a living, to play those roles of being, you know, the sister, the mother, the whatever, the employee, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. Even though I must say, I've studied healing touch. I'm a practitioner. Mm-hmm. I've done lots of spiritual studies, et cetera, et cetera. So there's lots of like book knowledge.
You are turning into a healer now. Yeah. Okay. And all of those reasons in the past were because you decided that you were not allowed to fly. You decided that you were not to fly. Okay. And there are a lot of reasons that look like the world told me that, the book told me that, the should, all that is all you. And that's, but that's what we're all learning now. We're all coming of age. We're all taking ownership and learning. Yes, Ray, Neptune's at 23. That's correct. But what's happening now is, and I'll tell you the truth, I've been working with so many people in their 60s. It's unbelievable how many people are mid-60s, late 60s, and are just now ending the first half of their life. They're just ending the bullshit part. Well, I got to pay this back. I got to pay that back. I got to do what I should. Got to do what I should. Yeah, but what I want to ask you is, who cares? Who cares? Who's taking notes? I used to circulate a meme that said, Virgo people have no one on their back writing onto a clipboard except themselves.
Right.
Say, but he's so Virgoan. Virgo's here to fix things. What's wrong? Fix it. It's really strong and it's really admirable. When I ended the book that we wrote, I changed all that perfection stuff and I changed it to Virgos are caring and they're pure. That's what they are. They're caring and they're pure. So now what happens, Kathy? It's really painful to see. But what happens is Virgos have a hell of a time giving themselves permission to go have fun, to go live. Because what Virgos can't stand is somebody jerking around. They can't stand it. They can't somebody at work is goofing off. They can't stand somebody who doesn't care. But what you're starting to learn, because Neptune is opposite you, this is why it's happening. Neptune is the opposite force. Neptune teaches you everything's okay. It's okay the way it is. It's all right. So you're getting that voice from your Neptune part, but Neptune's not always heard very well because the Virgo is like a drill sergeant. Shut up, quit crying, quit whining, get back to work. Well, your Neptune's got to tell the Virgo part, just shut up. Just shut up. Because what I'm doing is really good. What I'm doing is good for me. It's good for others. And I can smile and people are going to like being around me. And I'm going to like being around me. And the only thing it's not going to like being around me is all these illnesses. Secondly, when Neptune is really on you, as it is now, there's going to be a lot of illness-related symptoms. But I'm not a doctor, but in most cases, there's nothing there. It's just psychosomatic. In most Neptune cases, you're getting sick because you're so sensitive to stuff that you normally weren't sensitive to. Mm-hmm. So you're in great shape. I'm not going to give you any predictions about your body, but you're in great shape as far as moving forward because you're realizing you don't want to stop yourself. You had good reasons to, okay? But it's over. And you couldn't go out and screw up if you wanted to.
Yay.
It's just not your nature. It's not your nature to go goof around and spray your energy around and be silly and irresponsible. It's not. But it is your nature to allow yourself to walk through a field of flowers and enjoy the nature walk and not get down on yourself. You're wasting all your time. What are you doing here?
Right.
I'm smelling the flowers. That's what. You know, and it does a lot for me. And there's no doubt in my mind, none. You're going to dive strictly, directly into healing. I'll look at your sixth harmonic because Virgos are the nurse of the zodiac. They're just the nurses. You got a lot going for you. And when we do your sixth harmonic, it is a chart of your destiny, of your hero's journey. It will show us why you're here. And we'll take a look now and see what it says for you. All right, let's take a look at your, okay, here's your sixth harmonic. Let me try it again. Huh. There we go. All right, this is the chart that represents your true passion, what you've been through many lifetimes here to do, what is your real purpose, and this is gold to Virgo women. This is just gold because they want to know what does the goddess have to say. And that's what they're all about, period. What's at the top of the chart? Eris, this fanatical female planet. Keep that in mind. This fanatical female planet. She's the one ruling right now. We're not going to screw up anymore. We're not going to be ignored anymore. And people in India, 5 million Indian women watch 5 million Indian women walked hand in hand. They stretched out for 350 miles, and they told the men, yeah, we're not following you anymore. We're not walking 9 steps behind you. We're here to be who we are. That happened a couple years ago. Okay, what do we notice here? The moon is very powerful. 4 planets in Capricorn. Still this tremendous sense of duty and responsibility. It is so strong in your chart. You're not going to get past it, and that's okay.
That's okay.
But we can still activate other parts of you. Tremendous sense of duty and responsibility. Okay. Now, strong promise, strong dedication to the groups and the causes that you're involved in, especially the environment. You got Leo rising, you got the sun in the 3rd house. You may do some writing. You may do some writing here very soon. And if the writing is done, it's going to be of the type of manual.
Okay.
How to do something. Given specific instruction how to do this or that. Right. That's what you're built to do that. Where you put your hands, how you put your fingers, how you do it exactly. Okay, right. That's just you. Strong sense of responsibility to others. Pluto's already gone over this recently. So that means about 2 years ago, you went through a real turning point of I'm becoming aware of what my purpose is. Am I going to do anything about it? So what happened 2 years ago?
Well, about 2 years ago, I was in the hospital having a mastectomy.
I am sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so that was 2 years ago.
Okay, let's not talk about your physical body. What has happened to you in the past 2 years?
Well, what's happened to me is during this time out that we've had from society and recovering and stuff, it's really given me a chance to explore and see, do I really want to do that? How do I want to participate in this? Is it my role to participate in this? How can I be more balanced about this? What do I really want to do?
Okay, this is really typical. This is a really good conversation, astrologically and truthfully for Virgos. This is a real true example. Let me ask you a question. What do you want to do? I want everybody to observe what happens here. Watch this question. What do you want to do?
I really don't know.
Okay, stop right there. You want to know what that means? If you got a Neptune problem in your chart, she's right. She doesn't know. She doesn't have a Neptune problem. What does it mean? It means I've never asked myself the question that question because I never thought that I was allowed to hear the answer. That's what it means. So let's try this again. Kathy, what do you want to do?
I am really talented and enjoy organizing things and fixing things and putting events together and helping people, helping others and supporting others and accomplishing their goals.
You're damn right. And you got cancer. You got cancer at the midheaven, which means you like helping families be together and stuff. See, but you see, when a Virgo asks themselves that question, they feel like they're being greedy or feel like they're being selfish, but it's not true. And I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you why. And you can write this down or not. It's up to you. But I'm going to give you something I came up with several years ago. And you can write this down or you can ignore it. It's up to you. But it's a statement I came up with that is just for Virgos. But it's true for everybody, but specifically for Virgos. Okay? You do not have the right. Here's the saying. You do not have the right to suppress goddess energy when she wants to speak through you as you. You do not have the right to suppress goddess energy when she wants to speak through you as you. But see, Virgos are always, the power of Virgo is to stop somebody who's goofing around, get them back to work, but they go too far with it. You see? I'm not going to point at myself and say I'm goofing around. I'm just trying to express myself. So when the energies get toiled up inside, you get sick. You get sick because the energy want to come out. They want to come out of your heart. Cancer is the heart, the breast, stomach. The energies want to come out. You want to let them out. It's not you. It's about every Virgo on the planet. Right. So you are in really good shape. And did you notice I asked you a second time and you knew the answer? You knew the answer because you're right.
Yeah.
You're really good at it. Now let me ask you another question. When you look around at the mess that's called the USA now, do you think they could deal well with anybody who wants to organize stuff?
Say again, please.
Do you think we could benefit with about 6 million Cathys? Huh? We got a mess.
I didn't hear the first part of the question, so I'm sorry.
That's all right. Do you think we could deal with having a bunch of Cathys right now with the way the country is?
If we drive everybody crazy.
I don't care if it's crazy or not. Who's the one? Who's the one that stays after work? Who's the one that works in the back room? Who's the one that doesn't want to get paid? The Virgos.
Yeah.
If they don't like it, tough. Go down to your beach. Go swimming in the ocean.
Yeah.
But we need the Virgos now.
Yeah.
We need the Aquarians now because of their big vision. And we need the Cathys now because they got work to do. Got a mess to clean up. Who do you send to Katrina? You send in the Virgos.
Right.
Who's going to, and the Capricorns and the Taurus. You send in the earth signs to clean up the stuff. Anyhow, I hope you have gotten what you needed from this, and I will repeat what I said earlier because we're now at the end. But I told you that the thing that would happen, which is why I stopped reading your chart, because I saw Pluto and Eris bombarding the chart, and all that means is there's no reason to go mess around with your other little tiddlywinks in your chart. Your chart's on fire, and what's on fire is this great big passion in you wants to come out, and it's not used to coming out. Now, you're going to always be a little bit overworked, a little picky. You're always going to be a bit of a perfectionist, get things done and all that. You can't escape it because it's been around too long. But you can get a whole lot better at not putting yourself down, at not suppressing yourself. Like I said, when Goddess wants to speak through you, you got to let it happen. And sometimes Goddess says, let's go play at the beach.
Yeah.
So if you're like a typical Virgo, you're going to go play at the beach and you're going to explain to everybody all day about how you're just going to be there a couple hours. It's just the way it is. Virgo's a tough sign. But I think you're going to get better and better and better at it. I think the worst part of it's behind you. By the way, you have any trouble with your feet?
Do I have trouble with my feet?
Yes.
I have some neuropathy in some of my toes.
Yeah,
that's about it.
Okay, that can be good or bad. I just wonder because Neptune is on you, it rules the feet. What I would really recommend to you, and I don't know what you want to do because I don't know how you were raised, but you really need to get more aware of how Spirit is guiding you to do this healing work.
Okay.
Because it is. Spirit is called the Holy Spirit, call it what you want. But it's guiding you to the show. It's guiding you to this chart reading. It's guiding you to your being rebuilt. I think it's marvelous.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I've been searching for that. So trying to find, is it hands-on type healing? Is it other types?
Oh, no. What about that, Claudia? No, we have a know-how policy. There's a know-how policy on this show. Know-how. You cannot end the session with the word how.
Okay.
You know why?
Tell me.
Because it shows you have no faith.
Oh, I got you.
That's what it says to God. Or you're going to take care of me, but I need to know how. See, okay. Virgo is very much, tell me exactly what time they picking me up. What are we going to eat? Where are we going? How's it going to work? Where are you putting that nail? Where's the hammer at? And you got to throw that away because, talk to John, you got to have faith in the fact that you're being led, you're being directed. Do you think this was happenstance that you got on the show?
No.
I've stopped accepting people that wanted to say, would you do my chart? What did you do? You wrote to me, said, I'd like my chart done. Here it is. See, so you're really on track. And if you think you've been praying for an answer, you just got it. You really did. And it wasn't me.
Yeah, no, I understand.
It's just how this whole thing happens. Astrology is just marvelous. And you've got a good chart. It's not troubled by much compared to most charts I've seen. I'm sorry about your illness, but I really think things are on the way. And I really, really think you need to be successful in the next couple of years. You need to start handing it over. I'm not a preacher. Just hand it over. Say, I don't know what to do with this. You said you could help me. Please help me, and I'll listen for an answer.
Right.
So, yay for Kathy. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Very much. Very nice reading. I'm real pleased with you, for you. See you all next week. This will be up on Magical YouTube in a couple hours. And I thank you once again, Kathy, very much for being my guinea pig. Everybody else, thanks for attending. Thanks, Shelby. Go back to sleep.
Shelby says bye.
Thank you, Rick.
You are certainly welcome. All of you, you're welcome. Everybody stay safe.